Coming up, I'll be speaking with Phil Hansen, CEO of the Twin Cities area chapter of the American Red Cross. That's next on the St. Paul Forum. Welcome to the St. Paul Forum. I'm John Forde. With me today is Phil Hansen, CEO of the Twin Cities area chapter of the American Red Cross. Welcome, Phil.
It's great to be with you, John.
This is going to be great fun today. I'm really looking
so.
forward to it.
Yeah.
How did you wind up in our fair town? Were you born here?
No, I've only been here for about 3 years, John. And actually, my wife and I started out, most recently we were living in Massachusetts. And prior to that, I've worked for the Red Cross all over the country in different places. But I've been with the Red Cross since about 1989. So I've actually lived in Rochester and La Crosse, Madison for a long time. I was the CEO of the Red Cross there. Then I was a regional vice president with our national organization. And I was serving out in Massachusetts before coming back to the Twin Cities to be the CEO of the chapter here.
So you've been in the region, and then you went away and you came back? And,
exactly right. I'm very happy to be back. The community's been terrific to be a part of.
But the Red Cross is best known for disaster response. And normally I wouldn't ask a question like this, but the crew put me up to it. What disasters are going to be upcoming?
What disasters going to be coming up? Well, if I could predict that would be we get our people positioned and ready to go each and every time. We have had just a tremendous number of disasters this year. And it's funny, they usually say Minnesota is not a terribly disaster-prone state, but I think we're number one in the country this year in terms of total number of tornadoes. Number two was actually Texas. So we've had a tremendous amount of bad weather over the past year, and it's caused a lot of damage and a lot of heartbreak for people that we've had to be there to help with.
In a more general sense, the American Red Cross, is a part of like a global Red Cross network? I mean, how does it all fit together?
Oh, it sure does. You know, we're part of the biggest worldwide movement that's ever existed. 97 million volunteers around the globe in 186 different countries. We're part of the International Red Cross movement. So there's three big parts to the Red Cross. There's the International Committee of the Red Cross, or the ICRC. Their responsibility is to be the keeper of the Geneva Convention. So when you see people going into prisoner of war camps, that's the ICRC, making sure that the rights of combatants and non-combatants, people in war zones, are taken care of appropriately. The second big part is called the Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. The Federation's job is to bring the member society together when big disasters happen globally. So Haiti, for instance, in the midst of Haiti, we have over 40 Red Cross societies that have been working together in Haiti under the auspices of the Federation. The Federation also handles the big medical events that happen, like measles initiatives, malaria initiatives, taking care of people in countries for potable water. They have many projects going on around the world related to health. So you have the health aspect, the disaster response aspect, really falling under the work of the Federation. And then the third part is the member societies themselves, like the American Red Cross, of which we're a part. The Red Cross got started because of one gentleman, a guy named Henri Junot, who witnessed a terrible battle in northern Italy in a community called Solferino. He saw at the time, in the 1860s, that the soldiers were left on the battlefield basically to die, nobody to help them. He was appalled by this. He got to the local community nearby, organized the folks to help them, and afterwards he was so moved by what had happened, he wrote a book called A Memory, or Un Memoir de Solferino, or A Memory of Solferino, which called for the organization of some body to take care of people that were wounded in war, and that started the Geneva Conventions. So we became a signer eventually as a country as well to the Geneva Conventions, and they're the body that oversees the work of the International Red Cross around the world.
That's pretty amazing.
It's pretty cool stuff.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Tell me about the local chapter. I mean, you're the CEO. You have employees. You have to make payroll.
Yep.
How do you do that?
Well, we have a total of, across the country, about 600 Red Cross chapters that serve our communities day in and day out. So we're what's called a regional chapter here in the Twin Cities, and I'm responsible for kind of the northern two-thirds of Minnesota. I have 7 chapter offices that I work with across that territory, and we're here to deliver the Red Cross services each and every day. And the reason we're able to do it is largely because of the fact that, you know, they say with the Red Cross, we're the only organization that asks for your time, your money, and your blood. Right? So we get support from our financial donors, we get support from volunteers and blood contributors, and most importantly, our partners that we work closely with in the community. Working together as a group, we're able to deliver services each and every day to people that need them across the community.
Now, there is a big list of services the Red Cross provides, and of course, the sexy one is disaster response. It's like being superheroes.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about the other ones first. We'll save that for
Okay.
But there's an educational aspect?
Sure, there is. Let me give you a little context around it, too. So we talked about the International Red Cross. Clara Barton, who had started the American Red Cross in this country, she'd been serving during the Civil War. She was worn out from the Civil War. She went to convalesce in Europe. While she was there, of course, being the kind of person she was, she got involved in the Franco-Prussian War, and she saw the Red Cross for the first time, and she brought it back to this country in 1881. They formed the first chapter. So many chapters formed after that. But when Congress then chartered the Red Cross, they said you're going to provide 3 services in every community. So we have a congressional charter that says, a mandate that says you will provide disaster services, service to the military, and international services. However, we're not going to give you any money to do it. So the Red Cross is not a government agency. People get us confused sometimes with being a government agency. We don't receive appropriated dollars to do the work we do. Deliver those 3 services, and on top of that, then we have our core services that include health education programs. So you asked about health education. So we're talking about things like CPR and first aid training, water safety and aquatics training. In truth, in this community alone, in the region that I talked about that I serve, last year we trained over 150,000 people in CPR, first aid, and aquatics programs alone. So we're the biggest provider really in the community of swimming and lifeguard training, water safety instruction. So if you had a swim lesson here, chances are you got it through the Red Cross. As a matter of fact, I came to the Red Cross and started volunteering in 1983, largely because I was part of a drowning incident where 2 young boys drowned, and I found out later they'd never learned to swim. So I went looking for the organization that taught people to swim. I got started with the Red Cross, like many young people do. Start out as lifeguards, and you get trained as a water safety instructor, and eventually you're teaching swimming classes to kids. On top of that, CPR and first aid training is a big part of what we do every day. We also teach automated external defibrillator training, and we do it in 3 really interesting ways. You can take a class at our office here in the Twin Cities, or in our offices in St. Paul. You can come and take a CPR or a first aid class there. We'll have a team of people come out to your business or your school or your church and teach a class to you right there called our full service training. Or we have authorized providers, people that we've trained in the community that are embedded with their local organizations. Over 800 people are trained by the Red Cross and teach at their schools, at their community centers, at their area pools as Red Cross instructors. So to do all that service delivery, that 150,000 people, we're doing that through this network of instructors that we have across the community delivering these services. So if you're looking for a class, just go on to our website, which I think we'll give some information about at the end.
No, we're going to do it right now because it's top of mind right now. We'll put up the website, mention it again. It is
redcrosstc.org.
Okay.
redcrosstc.org.
And you have an event coming up where we can invade your offices.
Absolutely. On December 7th, we have a wonderful event. We do this every quarter where people can come. We have a morning session and an afternoon session, 7:30 and 4:30. For an hour and a half, we give you an overview of what the Red Cross does, a tour of our facility. It's called our All Access Program, where you can be a behind-the-scenes look at the way the Red Cross works. And we have an amazing facility over on West River Parkway where we give people a tour and show them the work of the Red Cross up close and personal.
Okay. How big is the staff?
The staff here is about 43, and it's a great question because of our total staff, we have a ratio of 73 volunteers for every paid staff member in the organization. So when you see how big the staff is several thousand volunteers and about 43 paid staff members. So we have a relatively small full-time equivalent paid staff, and then on top of that, we have some paid instructors and other folks that do work with us. But the biggest contingent of workers is volunteers.
Okay. So in addition to leveraging human beings directly, you also leverage a lot of other community resources in disaster relief. You sort of coordinate with not only public agencies, but transportation.
Right. Yeah, the Red Cross is part of a network of responders, and we work together with a number of partners. Other voluntary organizations that respond, we work together in a team called the Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. We meet on a regular basis with other entities like the Salvation Army, like United Way. We all work together to figure out how we're best going to respond to the needs of disaster victims, particularly in the bigger disasters. We also work with FEMA, with emergency management, with state emergency management, county and local, with Homeland Security. We're all working together in a network of service. The Red Cross is an entity that is noted in the Federal Response Plan for a certain set of responsibilities that we have in conjunction, working as a partner with FEMA, to provide what's really called congregate care. That's shelter, which includes sheltering, feeding, and taking care of people right after a disaster has happened. So we are really fully responsible for that. But there are some 20 different disaster functions that we perform in the midst of a big disaster. Do you know what the most common disaster is every day in this community?
No.
House fires. Every single day. Matter of fact, the Red Cross in this community almost responds to a disaster every single day. Every single day we're out responding, the most common one being the house fires, like the terrible fire that happened just last week in South Minneapolis, where we were there to respond. We had over 90 people that were put out of their homes. We actually opened a shelter and had a shelter open for 2 nights for people that needed a place to stay. And we provided them with food, clothing, shelter, and a place to stay and be safe until they could figure out the plan for where they're going to get back on their feet again.
Does that qualify as congregate care? I love that phrase, congregate care.
Yeah, congregate care. And it's interesting that there are over 300 sites in this community we've already pre-surveyed to be shelter locations. So we've gone out, for instance, in almost all the schools. We go out, pre-survey them to make sure they're adequate and suitable to be shelter sites. You have to have 40 square feet per person. You have to have cooking space. You have to have restrooms and showers. We know at 2 in the morning who's got the key to open the door. This is all kept in a big database and plotted on big maps in our office. So we're able to, at the moment's notice, 2 in the morning, crisis moment, we're there to actually be able to open a shelter right away. The cool thing is, so fire department goes out and their responsibility is property and life and limb, taking care of right away, getting the emergency needs of people. But they call upon us, and within 2 hours of calling us, we have to be on scene at the scenes of these fires. And our responsibility is to provide food, clothing, shelter, and medications for folks. You're sitting there 2 in the morning in your bathrobe, on your corner, likely your insurance person's not there with you at that moment in time. And our job is to be there to get you at least into a hotel, into a safe situation, to get you the basic essentials that you need to get over the next couple of days. Then we'll come back and sit down with you and do more work with you. We do that on a small level with the fires that we happen every single day, and big level like the big flooding that's going on in southern Minnesota right now.
Let's talk a little bit about the flood in southern Minnesota, and then I know you're not expecting any curveballs. I want to deconstruct Katrina. Can you go into that? You know a little bit about that. We could talk about Katrina.
Yeah, we could talk about Katrina a little bit.
But first, let's talk about the floods that happened 2 weeks ago in the southeast corner of Minnesota.
Yeah, we had a tremendous flooding operation, and Minnesota, as I mentioned, has had a tough summer. We had terrible tornadoes come through that hit places like Wadena and Rochester and Albert Lee earlier in the summer, and we provided a host of response services. We had shelters open during that time. Now we had a number of shelters open in southern Minnesota, and providing food, clothing, shelter, food for people through our emergency response vehicles that go through communities delivering food and food products. So we've had a lot of people, thousands of people that have needed our help and assistance. On an operation where we estimate we're going to be providing over $600,000 in services and assistance to people that were affected by this. So it was a wide-ranging flood hitting many communities and causing an awful lot of damage and devastation to family members. Our job, again, is where there's occupied dwellings involved, where people had homes that were affected. We're there to provide help and support during that emergency phase for people, those first several days when they need our help the most.
And how does it taper off after that? Are you really done 72 hours into it, and then local community efforts step forward? No,
oftentimes we continue, and sometimes it takes a lot longer. The flooding, we're almost a couple, 3 weeks into it now, and we're actually a little more than that, and we're still providing services involved with the flooding. It'll go on for several days, but really the emergency phase is our primary responsibility as an organization during those first several weeks typically. But we continue to work with the other agencies to meet unmet needs after the disaster has happened to the extent that we're able to do that as well. But there are many partners that work together on these responses to deliver services and long-term services in addition to the work that the Red Cross does.
Now, the biggest disaster in many people's minds in the last decade or more has been Katrina.
Yes.
And when I guess it's the phrase congregate care left to mind. It's like, well, when they're in the Superdome, that's a big congregation.
It was a huge thing to see, and of course I was able to witness some of those massive shelter operations that we were doing at the time. We served about 1 million people in Katrina in an area that was devastated. The area that was affected was the size of England, basically. So it was a massive operation. We had something in the neighborhood of 50,000 volunteers that were responding to the event. It was the biggest operation in the history of our organization worldwide. So we were very engaged with this, providing immediate food, clothing, shelter for people that were affected, and we have lots of volunteers that got a chance to get out on that operation and work. The interesting thing about the Red Cross is that you have local volunteers that work every day here to deliver, like I said, the fire and other disaster services, but you also have people that are willing to go on national operations. So let's say you were interested in going and serving on Katrina or on a hurricane or on a flood or a tornado somewhere else in the country. We'll send you for up to 3 weeks as a volunteer to deliver services and work on the ground. We have many people in this community that are willing to go out and do that kind of work and did this past year alone in places like New Jersey for flooding and Texas for tornadoes, all over the country. When they come back here again, their level and capacity to respond to our local community is now increased because they've worked on a big national operation, know how to handle it, and many of them go on to be supervisors of other volunteers. Our job here is to build volunteers, empower people to be able to help their community through the Red Cross, train them, position them, and put them in a place where they can turn around and deliver help and services to people in need, like Katrina victims, the flood victims, the house fire victims.
And is that international as well? How about Haiti? I know we sent a lot of people there.
We did.
Did the American Red Cross buy some plane tickets, or are they doing that on their own, or how did that happen?
Yeah, we provided a range of services to people in Haiti. So when we send volunteers out, we pay the cost for the volunteer to get to where they have to go to deliver the services. For places like Haiti, we did a lot of fundraising to help support the Haiti operation. A member of my staff actually went down and served for 8 weeks in Haiti. The Red Cross is there as part of the Federation, again, to provide food, clothing, shelter, medications, hospital situations. And the different Red Cross societies come with different levels of expertise. The American Red Cross has a particular expertise in potable water. Other ones have more expertise in sanitation. Some, like the Danish Red Cross, produces big hospital operations. So they all come together, bring their expertise, and deliver services on the ground, working with lots of other non-governmental organizations together as a team to deliver those services to people on the ground.
Okay. In case you're just joining us, you're watching the St. Paul Forum. I'm John Forde, and I'm interviewing Phil Hansen, CEO of the Twin Cities chapter of the American Red Cross. Phil, tell me about the blood supply. That people often think of the blood supply. Now, the American Red Cross handles roughly half the blood supply in the United States?
We're about half the nation's total supply. We have a network of blood centers across the entire country to work with and deliver and to take contributions of blood, but then to also process the blood so it can be sold or used then at hospitals in the area. So we actually work with hospitals to deliver the blood to them. We in our area here, about 110 hospitals that we work with on a regular basis, and we provide blood and blood products to them that are collected from voluntary contributions from the community.
And the importance that blood be given as a donation rather than blood purchased.
Yes.
Why is that important?
Well, it's a great question. You know, I think it's important that, for one thing, that when a voluntary donor gives blood, they're giving it, they're the healthiest donors typically because they're giving it as an altruistic thing that they want to do. It's also important that it's an opportunity for people in our society to step up and do something for their fellow man. So we encourage people to give blood as sort of a moral obligation in a way that we all have an obligation to help our neighbors and friends. And it does. You know, every unit of blood makes such a huge difference. You know that product is going to be used to save someone's life or sustain someone's life. It's absolutely essential. I want to know, you want to know that it's going to be there when we need it. So it's important that we encourage our friends and neighbors that can give blood to do so.
And is the rest of the blood supply, is it commercially controlled? Are there other nonprofit organizations doing parallel work, or who else is doing it?
Yeah, there's a number of other independent blood centers and other entities around the country that collect units of blood as well. And the most important thing is that we need to encourage anyone that can give blood. Blood is actually needed about every 2 seconds. So it's important that as much as possible we encourage people to give blood wherever they choose to give blood. The American Red Cross is an excellent place to come and give blood, but there are many other entities that collect as well. And encouraging people to give is an absolute essential thing that we need to do. Okay.
We talked a little bit earlier about trainings. Are there any trainings we missed?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of children's training as well. So if you're looking for a babysitter training, the Red Cross has babysitter training programs. If you're looking for a program that's for your children on safety, we have a program called the Safety Mobile that actually goes out to all the grade schools in the area. A big white bear goes out and as part of a program delivers safety education to children. In the United States every year about 3 million kids are hurt by unintentional accidents and injuries. So we're trying to take a bite out of that with a program that actually delivers safety and health education, fire safety education to children right in our schools. We reach about 20,000 kids a year with that program, and it's largely sponsored by our friends at Target. So it's a great program that's available in the community on a regular basis for free. Actually, we deliver. The babysitter training, there's classes set up on a regular schedule. People can get through our office. It's great to know if you're going to have somebody taking care of your kids, that they have a basic understanding of if a stranger comes to the door, if they have to change a diaper, if an emergency happens, they know how to handle that as well. In addition to that, we have lots of programs related to one of the biggest programs, the most important programs, is our Certified Nurse Assistant training. If you are, we know that by 2020, about 15% of the population is going to be 65, living longer and needing more care. We are training the folks that are going to be working in the long-term care facilities called CNAs or Certified Nurse Assistants. We have a tremendous program where we train about 1,200 a year, and we train you, and the state comes in and tests you, and you get certified or credentialed so you can work in a long-term care facility, and we also train home health aides as well. It's a great job opportunity for people. It's also a prerequisite to nursing school for folks, too. So we have a terrific CNA, Certified Nurse Assisting Training program, a lot of interest in that right now for people that are really looking for that first-time job opportunity.
And is that essentially a school? Are you charging tuition for that?
Yes, there's a tuition for that.
Okay.
Exactly right. And there's some tuition reimbursement if you get employed by a local entity as well that does long-term care. So there's an opportunity for that. And so there's we have a charge for that cost. And actually many of our classes, CPR and first aid, babysitting, have charges for them. And the idea of that is that we have an opportunity then to we charge for the classes to recover our costs associated with them. If we do make any money on the programs, that money gets driven right back into disaster services, service to military, and our international services programs.
It sounds like the CNA program is vocational, whereas the others are more, like seminars.
Right.
Short-term versus long. Are there other long-term programs?
Well, there are other vocational programs, like our emergency medical EMS program. So we train first responders and basic EMTs. Many firefighters, police officers come through our office to get their first responder or basic EMT training. And what's really cool about the program is that we actually have about 300 people from that program that actually deliver services at places like we have the Wild Game going on just down the street right now. And if you fell down the stairs at the Wild Game, the Red Cross people are the first people you're going to see there. They're EMS trained, emergency medical services trained. If you choke on something on a stick at the state fair, right, you're going to see our people first because we're out at the state fair delivering that kind of service as well. Many sites, the St. Paul Saints games and other places around the community, we're the folks that are delivering that kind of service.
Okay, good. Let's talk a little bit. We have 7 or 8 minutes left.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the part of the Red Cross that most people aren't as aware of, and that is your support to the military.
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually, most people don't know this, and I remember I mentioned that congressional charter a while back. So military is one of the things that we're required to do, and we are the emergency communication link between military personnel and their families. The military realized it needed an independent verifying source between the family member and the service member when something bad happens at home. So you're living here, your wife is here, your son is serving in Afghanistan. Your wife becomes critically ill and you want your son to come home. Really, the only way you can get that message delivered is through us. We actually have a waiver under HIPAA where we can call your wife's physician, and we can get what's called a doctor's interpretive statement, a diagnosis, prognosis, current condition, and a recommendation as to whether or not the service member's presence is warranted. Everywhere in the world where there's a major military unit, there's Red Cross personnel stationed with them. So there's Red Cross personnel in Afghanistan. They receive the message, track down command. Command decides if they'll let them come home. And through the military aid societies, we often help to get service members home. We deliver 1,000 of those messages just in this community every year. And we do something like 7,000 pre-deployment briefings where we meet with the family members and the service members before they're deployed out. So it's a terrific service to our military members. And here's one quick story as to why. So we had a situation, one of my colleagues called me and said, I got this letter from a family. He said the grandfather was dying. He was very close to death. They had turned the lights in his room down. And they had asked us to get the grandson home. He was off a ship off the coast of Iraq. They wanted us to bring the grandson home to be there for his grandfather. We said, okay, we'll send the message, but sometimes it's not a real close relationship, so we weren't sure what was going to happen. So they brought the service member. So we sent the message. We weren't sure what happened. The family said, okay, we want to tell you the rest of the story. So they said about 24 hours later, a young man appeared at the foot of the grandfather's bed in the dim light, dressed in his beautiful naval uniform. He saluted the man lying in the bed. And he said to the man lying in the bed, permission to come aboard. And the grandfather feebly raised his hand and said, permission granted. The young man removed his coat, removed his cap, crawled into bed, and held his grandfather until he died. So there's what a beautiful opportunity and moment for that family and for that service member to be able to be brought home to help and be there for that situation when that happens. So we do messages like that every single day. Death in the family, a baby's been born, those are messages we deliver, medical emergency at home, trying to help keep that connection between our family members and our military members. We also provide some services as part of the network of entities that work throughout this community to help our military members. We provide some services to our veterans and to returning service members as well. But there are many terrific organizations in this community that work with our military members, particularly through the Yellow Ribbon Network. And we're proud to be a part of that, but we're just a small part of that part of the work. Our biggest responsibility is that communication between our military personnel and their family members back home.
Okay. We have about 5 minutes left, and I'm sure we could spend the entire 5 minutes talking about how people can help.
Yes.
How do they volunteer? How many different places can they volunteer? Is there like a menu? I'm good at this. I don't want to do that.
Oh, sure. Sure. On a regular basis, we actually have sort of sessions where you can come and learn about the Red Cross's services. You can make a decision about what you might like to participate in. Through our website, there's information up there where you can self-screen for yourself and see the different kinds of things you can participate in at the Red Cross. We have very intensive volunteer experiences. If you want to become a disaster volunteer, it's a big commitment because you have to get a lot of training and positioning, and you got to be willing to stick with it. So we actually almost do recruiting to positions there, almost like you're getting hired in a way as a volunteer to do it, because we're going to invest a lot of training and experience in you.
So there's a vetting process.
There is a vetting process, particularly on the disaster side, to make sure that this is right for you and that you're going to be able to go through the training and be a part of that. On our EMS side, you have to go through the EMS training to become an EMS volunteer for the after hours. We have lots of other volunteer opportunities. We desperately need more people that want to teach CPR and first aid classes as volunteers. We need lots more people that are willing to work at our blood drives as community members working at our blood drives. We need greeters, and we need people that do the canteen work at the blood drive. So lots of people are needed there. And those are very episodic things. So you can come and volunteer and do that just for a day. But if you do a disaster volunteer thing, you're going to get a lot of training, and you may be with us. Many of them have been with us for years. Matter of fact, we just had a recognition the other night where we recognized one of our volunteers for 50 years of service.
Wow.
So we have many people that have been with us for a very long time and are fiercely loyal to the Red Cross and to the work and to the mission of what we're doing in the community, that mission of helping people.
Now, is that level of commitment, is that a barrier to getting volunteers? People want to, they're not sure, can they drift in and help for a few days? And are there ways to do that?
Well, there are, if you're doing some, like I said, some of the more episodic things. Like there's definitely ways to get in quickly to help with our blood drives. So if people are looking for that kind of activity, we can put you to work almost immediately helping at the blood drives. We can get you trained up to teach the CPR and first aid classes. And the disaster side, there are opportunities definitely to come and learn about it and decide if it's right for you. But we're more careful to make sure that we screen you correctly so that you can really make a good decision about participating as a volunteer in that activity.
Okay, and we'll put the website back up again. But is the easiest entree through the website, and they can kind of browse this kind of stuff?
Absolutely. The website's got tremendous information about our classes, about our volunteer opportunities, about ways you can financially support the organization. We even have our holiday giving catalog up on the website right now, too, or you can get a copy of it from us. And in that catalog, you can make decisions about helping us to provide everything from calling cards for military members to meals for people that have been affected by disasters.
Okay. Phil, we got about 2 minutes left, and I know you had several anecdotes in mind. Is there one that comes to mind right now that you wanted to tell?
We've had well, in terms of wonderful stories this year, we've just had a tremendous amount of response around disaster. So I think the biggest stories have been our ability to get out and respond directly to people that have needed help. The worst fire that I've been personally involved in, I've seen all sorts of different fires and storms and provided help in all different ways. But some of the toughest ones have been, we had some rural fires where we had a family that was affected, that lost their barn, lost all their cows, and lost part of their house. And I can just remember vividly standing with that family at 2 in the morning, holding on to that weeping farmer who had lost his cows. It was very precious to him and to his family, and being able to be there to give him food and clothing and shelter. Those things are so important, but our volunteers will tell you and the clients will tell you that we've worked with that the most important thing is that somebody was there at 2 in the morning to put an arm around your shoulder and tell you it's going to be okay, we're going to help you get back on track again. Those poignant moments, that it is such a privilege to be able to serve our community and serve people when they're in the worst of possible situations. We are so fortunate to have the opportunity. Most of our volunteers will tell you, they will say that I get more out of it as a volunteer than I feel like I even give to the clients because of the feeling I get from what I get to do when I help people in those very difficult circumstances.
Well, it's a very noble organization, and I appreciate your time coming here and telling us all about the American Red Cross.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for the time.
Okay. I've been talking with Phil Hansen, CEO of the Twin Cities chapter of the American Red Cross. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you next week on the St. Paul Forum.